Hello and welcome to this a little bit delayed edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, a show that is for the fans, by the fans. Thank you for hanging out with us today, whether you're watching this on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel, whether you're listening to us on a traditional audio format or on SportsWire Radio. Thank you so much for doing that. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. You can follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is at PBW Podcast on those platforms as well. Make sure you give us a follow. Make sure you interact with us on social media. That is the best way for us to know if you're digging what we're doing. We want to talk about what you want to hear about. So again, interact with us on social media. That's the best way for us to know if you're digging the show. The show is for the fans, by the fans. So for that reason, we want to entertain you folks. That's what we're here for. So my name is Chris Belcher. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Joining me, as always, is the young buck, Mr. Andy York. Andy, it's been a longer Memorial Day weekend for you than it has been for me. That would be why this show is not coming out on time. But, man, we're here to talk about AEW, Double or Nothing, man. How are you after all your travels this weekend?
I am fine. I literally have walked through my door about 30 minutes ago as of recording right now. So 10 hours from Buffalo, New York here. Straight shot, only stopping like twice. It's been a long day, but yeah, I didn't want to miss the show. I didn't want to miss talking about Double or Nothing because it's a weird show, and I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way. There are some things that I'm not too thrilled about, but
I agree.
It was the weird. I think it's the weirdest AEW pay-per-view yet, and so it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of dive in and talk about it.
It definitely is. Again, we normally do these shows right after the pay-per-view. AEW likes to make it difficult and do their shows on a holiday weekend. So that makes it
more people are going to pay because they don't have to work the next day. So I get that, but
it makes it difficult though when we're traveling and we're hanging out with family and stuff. We're we can't really take time away and do these shows, so we're a little bit delayed. But here we are coming up this Thursday, or thereabouts. We're getting a full preview WWE Hell in a Cell. This is the first time, Andy, I think, that we're having AEW and WWE pay-per-views in back-to-back weekends. It may have happened like once so far in the 3 years, but it's a busy time these last couple weeks.
Yeah, I think the only other time maybe when they did like a Saudi show, I think is the only other time,
maybe.
And those are
getting
not really
better.
pay-per-views. They're getting better, but at that time they were not really pay-per-views that we cared about watching. So I think this is the first time where it's like, oh, AEW's got a pay-per-view. Now WWE has a pay-per-view. And once we get through this, we got Money in the Bank, we got SummerSlam, we got All Out, we've got so much more. We got the show in England that's going to be big.
We've got Dynamite specials that are going to be rolling around, I'm sure.
It's going to be a
busy
summer. A very
busy summer. And guess what? We're about to make it busier on ourselves. This coming Thursday, we are going to announce the date of our brand new show, the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Federation. It is Andy and myself fantasy booking a current day roster where no contracts, no companies exist except mine and Andy. So this Thursday on our show, we will announce the date of our very first episode. It is going to be separate from our Monday shows and our Thursday shows. So if you're used to the old school stuff, you're still going to get it. If you're used to the new school stuff, you're still going to get it. But we're throwing this at you in between. So as if this summer wasn't busy with wrestling enough, Andy and I have decided to throw another wrench in everything and make it just as busy. But we're both very, very excited. Andy, I'm pumped.
If wrestling wasn't so much fun, I would hate this. But I'm loving every second of it. So I am. If this was like what my actual job was, I would be completely fine with this. So
sure.
I'm enjoying every second of it. I'm excited for the Federation stuff because we have been talking nonstop for basically since the draft, even a little bit before the draft, nonstop of like, we have a lot of plans for this stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Production value, I think, is going to be a lot of fun as well. Yes. Brad's got it set up to do some really cool stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun to go through that.
We are pumped, and we're finalizing all those things this week. So we'll be ready, like I said, on Thursday to give you a for sure date. So be on the lookout for that on this Thursday's episode. Man, let's get to it. Double or Nothing. It was a long show, almost over 5 hours if you count the buy-in.
I think so. Yeah.
So when
Thanks,
we were
NBA
pushing
playoffs.
thanks NBA playoffs. But we were pushing 6 hours for total with the buy-in and everything. But the show kicked off, man, in controversial fashion. MJF and Wardlow, it was a squash match, and I think you predicted that on the show last week that you thought it would be some sort of squash, maybe not totally, but it was a total squash.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be the original plan before all this MJF stuff.
Yeah,
happened.
Before we dive really into it, because there's not really much to talk about with the match. I mean, it was 10 power bombs
is crazy.
Right. So apparently there's MJF drama going on. And I'll just recap everybody in case you missed it. I don't know how you did. Recap what reports that we're seeing is that fans waited for an hour for MJF's meet and greet at the Fan Fest, and he no-showed. Mm-hmm. And there were refunds issued, and people were allowed to go buy another meet and greet in place so that they didn't have to miss out on that or what have you. He no-showed that. And then there were reports coming out that he has booked a flight home. He's leaving Vegas. Okay. Nobody really knew after that as to what was going to happen. And this match kicked off the show. AEW was continuing to advertise this match. Match kicked off the show, and MJF showed up. Then the reports started coming out. No, he actually never did book a flight home. And then we have this quick match. And then later on, reports come out that he showed up maybe an hour before the pay-per-view started. And he was immediately gone as soon as it was over with, or as soon as his match was over with. And then now reports are coming out today that he is still in Vegas and that he is meeting with Tony Khan one-on-one. Andy, I don't know, I guess my question, and you don't know the answer, but here we are speculating. What happened? Where did we go wrong?
And I mean this in the most respectful way because of who he is as a wrestling character. I don't believe a lot of what MJF says on social media because he is going to do whatever he can to stir up the fans. He's going to do whatever he can to get that reaction or to get that response that he kind of got over the weekend.
Right.
And so I don't know. There's a lot of reports out there that I'm not entirely sure of. I will say I hold a lot more stock in some wrestling journalists than others.
I agree.
I believe most of what Sean Ross Sapp reports, just to put that name out there. And he was the first one that kind of reported that and says he has receipts to kind of prove it, which I don't think he's the type of person that would lie about stuff like that. So I think that's part of it. I think he did book a flight maybe as like a show to Tony Khan. I can leave. I can just leave, walk away right now, and you can figure something out. And so I don't know. It's a weird situation. As a huge fan of what MJF is doing right now, I really hope he stays with AEW because we're not going to get the same version of MJF if he goes to WWE.
Not at all.
And so I think best for everybody is for him to stay in AEW. If it's a money thing, the thing is the dude deserves to get paid. So pay him whatever he needs to get paid. And everything else, I don't know. I feel like a lot of it's been blown out of proportion in a lot of ways. Because it makes for good TV. It makes, when he started off the show, it got a big reaction. I'm like, oh wow, is this actually going to happen or is it not? So that I think part of it is definitely to get that reaction or to work us fans, because that's something some wrestlers are really good at, is working us, and he's one of those that's great at working the fans,
if not the best.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at any of the meet and greets that he has done throughout these 3 years of AEW, you have guys who give him a 1 of 3,000 figure to sign, and he scribbles all over it and destroys it.
He'll make fun of kids. Which some people get upset about, but I'm like, he's staying in character. any interview he does, he is MJF. Like that's
Yep.
just who he is
That's
as a
right.
character. So that's pretty cool.
And you hit the nail on the head. It's in my notes, man. I wrote this exact phrase down. This is blown way out of proportion.
Yeah.
Like it's way more than what it should be.
Mhm.
And Tony Khan was asked about it in the media scrum on Sunday night, and he didn't want to comment on it. So I don't know exactly what that means.
Right.
But like you said, I think a lot of this is wrapped up in MJF's character. I think, and I said this, I think I said this on the show last week, that I think MJF is way too much of a professional for something like this to happen. Now, did he book a flight? Was he trying to prove a point? Did something happen behind the scenes that we don't know about? Yeah, there's probably a pretty good chance that it did.
Right.
But I think that MJF, I don't know him personally. He is the hottest star in wrestling right now. I mean, that can be argued, but he's for his age.
He's the hottest heel in professional wrestling,
Exactly,
without a doubt.
Especially for his age. He has such a huge future ahead of him, no matter what company that it's in. A toned down version of him is what we'd get in WWE. So I don't think any of us want that. I don't think MJF wants that.
Right.
But having said that, he does kind of hold all the cards. I just didn't see him being the kind of person that would pull a Sasha Banks or Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, he didn't walk out. At least he's having a conversation. Right. But I didn't see him being the one to like hold up Tony Khan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think with everything that's always reported, there's a nugget of truth. Like there always is a nugget of truth. And I think the nugget of truth is probably he is not happy with what they're offering him for his new contract. Because I believe his contract runs out in 2024, I believe.
Then why the heck are we talking about that now?
Because I think it's early 2024, and I think to get some certain bonuses if you sign early, and I think it's all contract stuff that is definitely behind the scenes and we're not shown. But I think he is going to stay. I think he is going to get the money that he deserves because he's too valuable to AEW to lose.
Correct.
And
Tony Khan knows that.
Tony knows that too. It's weird saying this now, but like, if you had to pick between Cody's contract and MJF's contract for AEW, MJF is way more valuable than Cody Rhodes
all day long.
And so, you want to keep MJF. You want to keep the Young Bucks. You want to keep Kenny Omega. You want to keep CM Punk. Like, you want to keep all these guys that are your big name guys. And I think he's going to get that money at some point. I just think this is all blown out of proportion, but I think part of it is MJF was just working Tony possibly to get more money, or it's all just a work and we bit so hard on it like we always do.
Well, I think too that the Cody Rhodes situation has a lot to do with this because there was a large contingency of people out there who said the Cody situation was just a huge work and he was going to pop back up and whatever. So now that we see, oh my gosh, it wasn't work. Now the next thing happens and we're like, oh my gosh, it's not a work. What is going on?
Right.
So Plus
with the whole Sasha and Naomi thing that just happened.
Right. Yeah.
And it's wrestling fans love to be behind the scenes of everything. And like the coolest thing was the Undertaker documentary because we got to see behind the scenes with the Undertaker, which never happened. And so getting to see that, getting to see contract debacles and things like that. So we love to see behind the scenes stuff. Sure. And this is just AEW kind of capitalizing on it, which who wouldn't at that point? And I think that's definitely playing a massive role in all this.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. At the end of the match, MJF doing the stretcher job, which is going to put him off TV at least for a little while.
I don't know if you saw the stretcher job completely. But I think they went to put the oxygen mask on him, and they just put it on his nose. They didn't even put it on his nose. They just put it on his nose. So I think AEW's medical team needs a little practice on where to put that stuff.
Or it's all very tongue-in-cheek, like they're playing this up.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you think he's going to be gone. Well, let's just stretcher him out of here and, whatever.
Yeah.
Because that stretcher was at ringside less than 30 seconds after the match was over with. So, So all that said, though, that's going to ride him off TV at least for a couple weeks. And that's good, man, because MJF's been running hard. We've seen nothing but MJF on TV ever since the beginning of AEW, really.
Yeah.
So it'll be good for him to take some time off, get whatever this negotiation thing is, get it all taken care of. And let Wardlow step out of MJF's shadow, let him kind of do his thing, see how that's actually going to work. But before we move on, I do have to ask, was there ever a doubt in your mind that he wasn't going to show?
When I heard his music play at the beginning of the show, that's when I was like, okay, he's definitely here, because I don't think AEW would start their show off by doing that. Like, right. I think that would be I think that would be kind of weird. But honestly, leading up to the show, I had no idea. I thought
Really?
there may be a chance that he doesn't show. I think once we saw the report that he wasn't on the plane that was booked for him to leave from Vegas to go back home, I think then I was more confident he was going to show up. But there was still, like, in the back of my mind, like, this may not happen. But knowing AEW, if MJF's not going to be there, they book somebody last second that's going to be somewhat of a big name to come in there for Wardlow.
Meltzer said friggin' Goldberg, and I'm like, that is not going to happen.
Goldberg would not. Goldberg would not do the job to Wardlow.
Right.
First off, so that wouldn't happen. I was thinking like maybe a Bully Ray, but I don't know if that would be big enough. I mean, I don't mean that any disrespect to Bully Ray, but I don't feel like that would be.
Well, I mean, at that
huge.
point, yeah, you're in Vegas, the magic capital of the world. So this is going to sound corny, but you're pulling a rabbit out of a hat at the last minute, So there's not many options you could go with.
You got Paul White just hanging around. He could have shown up, which he would have got a big. I mean, when his music hit, he would have got somewhat of a big pop. And then Wardlow powerbombing him. There's your big moment for Wardlow as well. But I'm glad it was MJF. I'm glad we got to close this chapter. The whole time I was worried for Wardlow, because this would have derailed a lot of his massive push that he's had coming up to this. And I'm glad that MJF didn't hurt his chance as well. Right. Like, I'm glad he didn't go the selfish route that he could have gone, but he stuck around and at least did the job for Wardlow. And I mean, he made Wardlow look massive.
He did
yesterday as well.
He did. And I'll just say this. Like, I had zero doubts that he was going to show up. It was 100% in my head that he was showing. And that's not me just saying, oh, well, I knew he was going to show up. Yeah. No, like, I honestly was like, there's no way. There's no way this is going to happen. I just think MJF is more professional than that. Yeah. Maybe that's me giving him too much credit. I don't know. But this show, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, was pushing 6 hours. So we're not going to hit everything as in depth as maybe we'd like to, because we'd be here all dang night. But we're trying to hit the highlights. The Young Bucks and the Hardy Boys, one of the matches that I was really not looking forward to. Can I just say before we get to the match that the stuff on Rampage was fantastic? Like, Gangrel and the Young Bucks dressing up like the Hardys and Brandon Cutler dressing up like Lita.
That was the best. And
it was so good.
We knock AEW commentary a lot because they deserve it. Excalibur's reaction to Brandon Cutler dressed as Lita is what popped me the most, because he was like, he's wearing the thong. He's got the Lita thong on. What the heck is going on? Stuff like that popped me.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was really good. And then we get to the match, and then the Young Bucks video before their music started with the Elvis thing was just amazing. Like, I love that. I loved it. Yeah. It was so good. And then they come out with the Elvis stuff again. A throwback to the first Double or Nothing. It was so good. Like, their creativity is just fantastic. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. I love it. The way that they're able to do stuff like that as heels and make it work. Like, Young Bucks as babyface is fine. They're much better as the heels running things. And like, we made fun of it, but I loved it when they came out as the Toon Squad a couple months ago with Kenny Omega.
Man, I did too. I love that.
That was stuff great. Like that. Like, I love when wrestling is stupid. And I mean that in the most sincere and nicest way I can, because
It's so funny that it's stupid.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's supposed to be. Stuff like
Look
that
at
is supposed to be.
look at freaking Ezekiel and Kevin Owens on Monday Night Raw. Like, that's so
Danhausen.
stupid. Danhausen, yeah.
Danhausen should never work, and he is one of the highlights of AEW every week. Him and Hook together are one of the highlights every single week. So just all of them and their creativity, and you get to see a lot more of it on BTE. But I love when stuff like that gets to come through on pay-per-views and stuff.
Yep. The match itself was not as bad as I expected it to be. There was a couple of rough spots. Jeff still looked rough. Matt did a great job of, I don't want to say carrying his brother, but carrying his brother.
Yeah.
And kudos to the Young Bucks, man. They had their work
crazy.
They had their working boots on, and they made the Hardys look really good.
Yeah, that's one thing about the Young Bucks is I know they get a lot of flack for being spot monkeys and stuff. They do sell really well, though. Like, they do make teams feel important. And I'm not going to say that it's hard to make the Hardys, because it's the Hardys. Like, I think they could go out there in their wheelchairs when they're 90, and we would still be like, "Oh, it's the Hardys. We're going to freak out because it's the Hardys." Like, who's not going to be excited to see the Hardys?
Right.
But yeah, they made them look like $1 million. Jeff Hardy needs to stop doing swanton bombs onto steel steps. My goodness, the dude is going to die one day. Like, I love Jeff. I love everything about Jeff, but he's got to slow down a little. Like, he's got to slow down.
Man, if this is a situation where he's like, I'm going to stick it up Vince McMahon's rear end and yada, 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 like, you don't have to do that.
Right.
Like, just...
And it could be one of those where he's saying, this is my final run, so I'm going to leave it all out there. And if that's the case, then, like, I get that. I understand that. You want to be the Jeff Hardy that we all fell in love with, because it's hard not to love Jeff Hardy. But, dude, you gotta slow down a little bit. Like, every once in a while is fine, but I'm pretty sure he's done a swanton bomb on the steel steps like 4 weeks in a row now. And it's gotten rougher and rougher each and every time.
And that whisper in the wind spot, man, where he was trying to go up in the middle of the match to hit,
or when he couldn't get his footing. I think his boot was falling apart, though.
His boot was falling, right? But he had trouble getting both legs up there.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh!
Yeah.
And it wasn't him selling either; it was him stumbling. Like, gosh, come on. I told you before we started recording that I figured out a beef that I have with the Young Bucks. And many of you know, if you've listened to this podcast for a long time, I can't stand the Bucks. Their marketing is incredible. I just put over their creativity. They're spot monkeys, and I can't stand that. Here's one of my main issues with them, and I finally figured it out, and it hit me during this Hardy Boys match. And this is a result of everybody does this, because I know that's going to be your first response as soon as I say this. Everybody does it. I just put the fault on the Young Bucks. Okay. They're the fall guys for this issue. And that's the super kick. I know that's their thing. But y'all, my favorite wrestler of all time is the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. And he invented the super kick finish. Maybe he wasn't the first one to do it, but the guy made it famous. So to see that move now get just thrown around like a headlock or a knife edge chop or whatever, it drives me insane. It really, really does. And again, I know everybody does it. Seth Rollins does it.
Adam Cole does it.
Adam Cole does it. Everybody does it, but I place the blame on the Young Bucks.
They made it cool again. Like, I feel
it never wasn't cool.
I feel like nobody used it though.
And that's
as
why.
much. And but I will say, I agree, they use it a lot. And because of them, I feel like a lot of other people started using it again. Right. I just feel like from when Shawn retired, nobody really ever did the super kick. And then they kind of, I don't know if they shouldn't. They brought it. If Kevin Owens can use the stunner, I think anybody can use a super kick. But I think that's just kind of, I agree they use it too much, because like people kick out of, I think they also have like a tombstone style pile driver that they've had for years that
right.
sometimes people kick out of. So I get it. I agree for the most part, but it's part of their repertoire now. So I'm not as
Right.
like I'm just used to it now. It's like, oh, the Bucks are going to super kick like crazy. And yeah,
Kills
it's
me.
one of those. I will say there's a difference though between a super kick and a sweet chin music.
I mean,
They don't
yeah,
tune up. They don't tune up the band, and tuning up the band makes all the difference.
I get it. Yes, I understand that. But when HBK was active, nobody else used that move.
No,
That move
No.
wasn't just thrown around willy-nilly, whatever.
Yeah.
And if the Bucks are using it in honor of HBK or whatever, which I'm sure they are, okay, fine. I understand that, but like I am of the mindset that needs to be protected in some way, shape, or form, and it's not protected anymore, so it drives me nuts.
Yeah, and I feel like the same is kind of true for like pile drivers. Like everybody uses a
Sure.
pile driver. Everybody. Ricky Morton does a Canadian destroyer. So like,
Right.
Like I feel like a lot of those moves aren't as protected as they once were.
They're not.
And I just feel like that's the day of wrestling, though. I don't feel like finishers are protected anymore. And
that's true.
Any company. I mean, Seth Rollins, he hit like 20 curb stomps on like 5 different people, and they keep kicking out. So like, I feel like it just the art of protecting the finisher is lost.
Yeah,
and is not used anymore.
Yeah, we're protecting the end of days until Drew McIntyre kicks out at WrestleMania.
But like that made it feel special. Like that,
it did.
That made it feel special. Nobody, I don't believe anybody's really kicked out of Roman's spear,
right,
in a while. They may have. I think it's the guillotine that is more protected than the spear is.
Right.
For a while, like when Kofi was champ, the Trouble in Paradise, nobody kicked out of that.
Right. Exactly.
So like, I just feel like it's not going to be as important as it once was.
Sure.
But I can definitely see where the gripe is for you to see the super kick over and over and over again and it not be the finish of the match.
Right. That's where I'm at. Shawn Michaels. Because like, man, like the whole thing with that was what the whole, not to go down too far of a rabbit hole here, but that's what the whole feud with Diesel was based on. It's like, boom, one super kick and his lights were turned out. That was the way that little man Shawn could compete with the big guys, is boom, you hit a super kick. So like that's where I am with that. Anyway, let's move on to quite easily, quite painfully, don't know how I sat through this, the worst match of the night. Jade Cargill and Anna Jay. Man, it was rough. It was rough.
It was okay. It wasn't.
It was rough.
It was bad, but it wasn't. They've had worse. Like Jade Cargill's had worse matches before.
I agree with that. Anna Jay was rough, man. I was kind of shocked. There was a couple of things that she just totally whiffed on.
Yeah, there were a couple of moments where they were definitely out of sync. Yep. But this is one of those cases where nobody's going to remember the match. Everybody's going to remember what happened after the match. Like it's one of those that the match was in place to get to the end. So the match was fine for what it was. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't good. It wasn't Bobby Lashley Omos levels of bad. At least there was some athleticism in it. And the finish, I love the finish, like hitting the I forget what she calls it, but like the glam
jaded,
slam.
I think she calls it jaded or something
like that.
Yeah.
From the top rope, like that was a pretty slick spot.
That was cool.
When Anna Jay put the Queen Slayer on her, I thought for a second, like I thought that was
right.
I thought she was gonna pass out, but
it was cool. Yeah, it was cool.
The match was rough. Nobody's gonna remember the match though because of the 2 debuts that we got.
Right, which we'll get to in just a second. I feel like, man, inexperience shows, especially when you put it on a pay-per-view. Like that's, to me, the TBS title doesn't have any credibility. That's just my opinion. That's just me. I think it belongs on Dark and Dark Elevation to where we can work out some of these things. You know what I mean?
I agree. I think it is. It's not as prestigious as fast as like the TNT Championship was. That's because not like a Cody hasn't held it, or a Miro, or a Brody Lee. Like somebody like that hasn't held it. I think the fact that Jade is 32-0 definitely holds it up. And I think this is going to sound weird. As long as it's not defended in a match, like Jade looks amazing with that belt. She looks really good with the belt. The presentation, as long as she's in front of the camera and out wrestling, like I get it. I buy into it. And then the bell rings. I'm like, I
Yep.
kind of remember.
That's
I
exactly
think
right.
that's going to start changing now because I think either the person that debuted, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
think Athena is going to take it from her. I think that's one opportunity. Former Ember Moon, now Athena. I think Chris Statlander has a chance. Like Chris Statlander is hot with the crowd right now.
See, I think it's Statlander before it's Athena. I think Athena gets the shot first.
Yeah,
but I think Statlander is the one to dethrone her.
I think Athena's not going to stay in the TBS title division for long. I think she could be the one to beat Thunder Rosa if they build her the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that you could build it up to that point. But yeah, I think Chris Statlander. People were upset that Ruby beat Chris on Rampage. Chris Statlander's got some momentum behind her right now, and I think they're going to definitely ride that. Maybe I don't think they're going to wait till All Out. I think it's going to happen on probably one of the Dynamite specials between then and now.
Yep, I agree. And then, of course, you've got Stokely Hathaway, the former Malcolm Bivens, debuting, and it seems like he's replacing Smart Mark in the corner of Jade Cargill, which...
Let Smart Mark go do other stuff. He needs to just take a breath for a second.
He's got that book too good-itis going on. He needs to chill out for a minute. No, kudos to Smart Mark Sterling for all of the. Oh my gosh, sorry y'all. I've got Double or Nothing on here while we're recording because peek behind the curtain. There's 2 matches I haven't seen yet, but Ricky Starks took a nasty bump in this tag match. Oh my gosh.
I was going to save this for when we talked about it. The dude has almost died like 3 matches in a row now.
I know.
Please protect Ricky's neck. Please protect his neck.
Oh, that was a crazy spot by Swerve. Anyway, okay, back to the matter at hand. But yeah, give Smart Mark a break. I mean, kudos to the guy for all that he's doing.
Yeah.
But I think Stokely Hathaway is a way better fit for Jade than Mark.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with that. He fits in with the baddies, and that's not a race thing. Don't hear me out with that. I just think his attitude and his demeanor and what he brings to the table fits in more where Mark was kind of like, oh, I've got this prized possession, blah, 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 whatever, kind of thing. I'm happy with it. I think it's a good move.
And I think with someone like Stokely, I think the baddies are going to benefit just as much as Jade does from this.
Yep,
no disrespect to Smart Mark, because I don't think Jade has the aura around her as much if Smart Mark is not there to be her manager for as long as he was. He deserves a lot of the credit for the presentation of Jade Cargill.
Absolutely.
But I think Stokely is going to help everybody in that collective circle because the dude is just great as a manager.
Yes.
Like, he is not comparing him to Paul Heyman at all, but he could be, if he's done the right way, he could be the next generation's version of Paul Heyman.
I was just getting ready to make that comparison. Get out of my brain. Now, what I was going to say is, like, if you're lining up Smart Mark and Stokely Hathaway, I feel like Smart Mark is more like a Jim Cornette.
Yes.
Whereas Stokely Hathaway is more like a Paul Heyman.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Especially Paul Heyman early on, like WCW Paul Heyman, I think that's the comparison. So get out of my brain.
But nice. I think this is going to really benefit Jade. I think she is, which is crazy because her presentation to me was almost flawless. Like she's gotten better on the mic. She hasn't ever really been bad on the mic. She's gotten a lot better on the mic. She looks the part, and now that she's got Stokely Hathaway with her, it's really just going to go up from here.
Right.
Like, you're just going to go up from here.
Not to get too far into we're getting really far into the weeds on a lot of things, and that's fine because we're talking about these
5-hour show. We got a lot to talk about.
We got a lot to talk about.
There's going to be a lot of rabbits chased. So
here's another rabbit for you. You remember before we started recording, I told you I figured out 2 beefs with things that a lot of people hear me complain about on this show. Yeah. Well, I figured out a beef that I have with commentary, and this could go down a really big rabbit hole, but I'm willing to open up the can of worms right here, right now.
It's going to be fun.
So when Athena debuted at the end of this match, Jim Ross could not have sounded less interested that he did during this debut.
Yeah.
He literally was like, "Oh, look at that. Yeah. It's like he had no clue who she was.
No.
Not the foggiest
No.
idea who she was. And here's where my beef comes in. And this is not just JR, okay? This has a lot to do with Shivani too. And we praise Excalibur all the time on the show for filling in the gaps and really trying to pull the team together.
And reacting the way he should react in moments. Because yes, JR was boring as all get out through this whole entire pay-per-view.
Yes, he was. So
I wanted to just mute his mic if I could from my home just to listen to Excalibur and Shivani. Excalibur lost his mind when Athena popped, like when Athena showed up. So like credit to him for losing his mind. And Shivani, Shivani did as well. But yeah, JR couldn't care less. He was just there.
So here's my beef with commentary. And again, I think JR's has a lot to do with JR being JR, but it's very clear that AEW commentators are not being fed lines.
Yes.
Now, we complain a lot about how maybe WWE commentators are fed too many lines.
Yes.
Or, oh my gosh, they got fed that line and that was just so bad.
For the love of mankind, when Shane McMahon jumped off the cell, that's like my go-to, like, Vince, get out of my ear, please. Do not say that.
Absolutely. So I get that. But them not being fed lines creates a huge hole in the commentary because they are given the freedom to say what they feel, react to what they see or whatever. And clearly, a lot of what's going on is not JR's style and is not Tony Schiavone's style. So they don't care. So they don't have anything to say about it.
Yeah.
So you got Excalibur, like I said, just trying his best to pull everything together.
I think I completely agree. Like, I completely agree that AEW is not fed enough lines at times.
And maybe feeding lines is not the answer.
Right. They're not filled in with what to say.
Right.
With a lot of things. And I think that is beneficial, but is not beneficial at the same time. I think it's a double-edged sword and whatever you do. Because, and I'm not knocking Michael Cole, Pat McAfee, any of them, because I have grown to it. I used to hate Michael Cole because the Michael Cole I was used to was heel Michael Cole during the Miz's run. So like that was like the Michael Cole I was used to. And I think when you're not fed lines, you have to do more research on your own. You have to prepare yourself more on your own. Excalibur prepares himself fully for every show.
Sure.
Shivani prepares himself for the most part fully through every show. Like Shivani is into every match, and I'm fine with that. Like I'm okay with that. JR, I'm not behind the scenes. I don't know. This is how it comes off. It seems like he just gets there, walks to the commentary table, sits down, calls the show, gets up, and just leaves. Like that's what it feels like. And
it does.
I hate dogging on JR because it's such an easy target, and the dude is the greatest commentator of all time. Like one of the greatest, if not the greatest. If you're doing a Mount Rushmore of commentating,
he's on it.
JR is on that list. No matter how bad his AEW run is, JR is always going to be on that list because the stuff that he did.
That's like saying you take Michael Jordan off the Mount Rushmore of basketball for his Wizards run.
Exactly.
Like, you're not going to do that.
You're not going to do that. But JR just needs to care. If it's not his thing, pretend like it is. Like we're all pretending in a lot of this stuff. Pretend like it is. Care a little bit more. There was a couple of times during this entire show where I was just like, JR, please just let Shivani and Excalibur, or just let the dude that was there to call the Young Bucks Matt Hardy match take your place, because he was at least enjoyable to listen to at times.
Right.
But yeah, it was a struggle. It was a struggle to listen to him. And yeah, he couldn't care less about anything. I don't think he even really reacted when Stokely Hathaway showed up.
He didn't.
He was like, look at this. And then Excalibur took off.
It just, it's so frustrating. And I get like that they're keeping the commentators in the dark about debuts or stuff like that.
To get genuine reactions.
They want their genuine reaction. JR does not have a genuine reaction. So like, that's not good. Like You got to do something.
The perfect example of it working is when Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson showed up.
Right.
All three of them were losing their mind on commentary because, like, oh wow, that's a really big deal. Like both those guys are here, and not every debut needs to be like a mind blowing thing. But when somebody like Athena shows up, it should be bigger than what it was portrayed by JR and by Shivani a little bit. And so I think that is definitely a massive down for this entire show was just Jim Ross and Shivani.
I think had she played a bigger role in WWE, they would have had a bigger reaction. And that's not a knock on WWE or anything like that. That's just the way that it is.
Yeah.
Versus Adam Cole, who was the NXT champion for over 400 days.
Yeah.
Bryan Danielson, who had one of the biggest moments in WrestleMania history. Like, okay, you're going to know who those guys are. Right. You know what I mean? So it's annoying, it's frustrating, and it wouldn't be a show talking about AEW if we didn't dog on commentary. So here we are.
I'm going to stop calling it commentary. I'm just going to start calling it dog on JR because
okay,
that's basically what it is. Because like I have no beef with Excalibur at all.
No.
Like I want Excalibur to stay. Like I want Excalibur to be the guy on commentary. And I don't even mind Shivani. Like Shivani is fine at
he's getting
most
better.
of the time. He's
getting better.
He's getting more comfortable in the AEW style. And granted, like it's going to take some time for both guys to get comfortable with some of this stuff, but I just don't feel like JR cares about it at all.
I agree. Totally agree. All right, let's move on before we get in even more trouble than we already are. Death Triangle and House of Black 6-man tag up until this, the rest of the card, obviously. This was my favorite match after this was over with. Like, this match was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This was great. Lots of misfires in this match, though. Did you notice that there was a lot of there was some, Ray Phoenix missed the drop kick off the top, going to the outside. Just a lot of stuff that just didn't nail.
I think it's the lucha style. Like honest,
probably
if you look at a lot of lucha, and this is no like when they hit stuff, it's like, oh, this is ridiculous. The stuff that Ray Phoenix and Pentagon and Rey Mysterio are able to hit, like those are really cool. But there was some moments where they definitely missed some stuff. Like there are times in matches where like when you miss a spot, but it still kind of works or works better in return.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a couple of spots where you could tell that they missed, but they picked up and basically made up for it pretty quickly. Like it never really took me out of the match when they missed a couple of spots.
Yeah, me either. I just kind of noticed it. I was like, I guess the reason I bring it up is because it feels like these guys don't miss like that. Yeah. Or at least when they miss that bad.
It's like Seth Rollins. When Seth Rollins never misses, but the one time he does, everybody's like, oh, look at that. He missed big time. And it's like, he does that move 99 times or 100 times. He messes up once. We're going to notice.
Exactly. And finally, we get Julia Hart joining the House of Black in a very, very, very cool way. Again, I hate the lights off, lights on thing, but it's a House of Black thing, so I get it.
Yeah. It's like the Undertaker. Undertaker turning the lights off all the time. I hate it for the debuts. Like, I'm glad they didn't do it for Athena. Like, I'm glad they didn't just turn the lights off and turn it back on. But like, when it's like spooky characters, turn the lights off. We're fine.
Speaking of spooky, man, that House of Black entrance was awesome.
Amazing.
So good.
I love the masks that they wear. I love the face paint that they wear. Julia Hart looked amazing.
Yes, she did.
As part of House of Black. I texted because you hadn't got to see this yet, and I in between time of hanging out with family and changing clothes, I turned it on at the right spot and saw this happen. And I was like, this has been a long time coming, but the way they did it was definitely worth the wait.
It's cool.
Like, I'm glad she didn't just like turn on Varsity Blondes, but like, oh, she is like now definitely officially a part. Like, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm glad she didn't turn on those guys. It made it different. Mm-hmm. It made it unexpected.
Yeah.
I also, again, they've been dragging this out for a long time, but I'm glad that they talked about it for a while and then they stopped. And then they talked about it for a while and then they stopped, so you forget about it, and then boom, she shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I like the way they did that.
It's very cool. Let's move on to the Owen Hart finals, both the men and the women. Samoa Joe and Adam Cole. Number one, very cool to have Mike Chioda refereeing this match.
Yeah.
That's a very nice touch. Honestly, I don't want to say I was disappointed with this match because clearly I was not. Because you can't put these two guys in the ring together and be disappointed in it. But
right.
Maybe it was they didn't have enough time. There wasn't a lot of false finishes going on. I didn't feel like I was on the edge of my seat for this match like I wanted to be. Did you get that vibe at all?
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe too. I don't know. I feel like sometimes we play matches more up in our mind, and then when they don't fully deliver like we thought, then we're disappointed. Like that.
AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yeah, I've gone back and watched that match. It's not great, but it's like, oh, it's not as bad as I remember. Like
exactly.
It's much better than I remember.
Yep.
And so I feel like this is gonna be one of those, like, if we went back and watched it like 2 weeks from now, we'd be like, oh, it's fine. Like, it is what it is.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like there was just something off. I feel like there was just something different about this matchup. I did not know. I did not realize that this was the first time that they had ever faced each other.
I know, me either.
That was really cool that's the first time they ever faced each other.
Yep.
And so maybe it was a chemistry thing. Like maybe since they haven't wrestled together and wrestled ever, it was a chemistry thing. But it's one of those, like, we learned from the first time. The second time around is going to be the one where I think we're like, if they ever run this match back, oh, this is going to be great. Like, this is going to be a great match to watch. Like,
this felt like it could have been like the main event of Dynamite rather than a big time match on a pay-per-view. But not going to knock it. It's Adam Cole. I'm wearing the dang shirt. Like, I'm not going to knock these guys. I'm just saying, like you, we play these matches up in our head sometimes, and sometimes they don't deliver, but it is what it is.
Right.
It's fine. It was a good match. I enjoyed it. Adam Cole won, as we predicted. Also, we predicted Britt Baker winning on the other side. A lot of people I saw commented online and said, well, when Britt Baker walked out and she matched Adam Cole, we all knew she was going to win. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. But, man, Britt Baker getting played to the ring by my boy Rich Ward from Fozzy, and then Rancid playing Ruby Soho to the ring, that was really cool. It was a nice touch.
That was a nice touch. I feel like after Rancid played, though, Ruby should have won. Like that. Like I feel like Ruby, and I get why Britt won. I'm not dogging Britt winning. Like I understand why Britt won, because who's not going to have Adam Cole and Britt Baker win their first tournament and blah blah. Yep. I fully understand that.
Yep.
But I don't know. I felt like it was the time to have Ruby do something. And I don't feel like Britt needed it as much as Ruby did. Like, I feel like Ruby needed this win to make her feel more important in the women's division than she actually is. Like, and I get it. She beat Riho in the second round, who's a former women's champion. Like, that's somewhat of a big deal because she beat a former champion. She beat Chris Statlander, which a lot of people weren't too thrilled about. And then she goes to fight Britt Baker. I don't think Britt Baker is at the Charlotte level yet. But if they keep kind of, even though she's not the champion, I don't think your champion has to be the face of your division, but you just got to be very careful how you handle it, because you want to make everyone else feel important and special without singling out Charlotte or Britt or Roman Reigns. Like that's part of the problem, is like they start to get shoved down our throat and we're like, okay, let's we like them, but let's chill out a little bit. And I don't want that to happen with Britt.
Well, I mean, I'm with you. Like, if not now, when? With Ruby, you know what I mean? And we discussed it on the show. Like, what do you do? And I thought, I'm not going to say that I think Britt should have won, because like you said, Adam Cole and Britt Baker, the way they did the presentation, you're not going to have Adam Cole and Ruby Soho standing on that stage the way that all that happened. It's not going to happen, So it makes sense. I just think I go back to the point that I made when Britt won the title last year, or whenever she won it. I think it was
last
Double
year,
or Nothing 2021. Yeah.
Yep.
It's Britt Baker and it's everybody else. And I don't care who else we bring in. I don't care. We're going to talk about a great women's match here in just a minute. I don't care what else happens in the division until you get somebody to set the world on fire. It's Britt Baker and it's everybody else. And right now, I'm sorry, No disrespect to Ruby Soho. No disrespect to the debuting Athena. That we talked about the momentum for Chris Statlander, all this other stuff. No disrespect, but ain't nobody setting the world on fire but Britt Baker in that division. Still.
Yeah, I agree, but I think fans are starting to turn sour on her a little. Like I think
Maybe.
fans are more because that crowd was split 50-50 for Ruby and Britt. Like they
Yeah,
were,
they were.
and that was one thing about the crowd the whole night. They were split for a majority of these matches. The crowd was hot for this pay-per-view.
Yep, they were.
Which most AEW pay-per-view crowds are are extremely hot for the entire show. And I don't know. I agree. I think Britt is standing out. I think Thunder Rosa was definitely catching a lot of momentum, kind of backtracked a little bit, but I think now that we got her kind of away from the whole Nyla Rose feud debacle that was, the Serena Deeb stuff has been really great for her, and it's really made her feel more important, and it's kind of pushed her forward. If they get behind Athena could catch up to that. Ruby Soho still could kind of catch up. They just got to protect her more or put her in better situations than she is right now. But yeah, I agree. I think as long as Britt is the like the front and center of your division, nobody else is really going to have the opportunity to kind of get up to that point. Like
Sure.
you gotta balance it out a little bit.
Sure. Yep. We talked about chemistry with Adam Cole and Samoa Joe. I don't think Ruby and Britt have good chemistry. I thought that I'm not knocking their match because it was good. I honestly thought this at the Arthur Ashe Stadium match.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was great. And this one, like, I don't know what it was. I don't feel like that they worked super well together.
See, I bought into this one more than I did Adam Cole and Samoa Joe.
Okay.
I think there were more moments where, and I think part of that is because like I was 1,000% sure Adam Cole was winning his. Like I love Samoa Joe, but I don't think there was any chance Joe was going to win.
Correct.
That with this one, I was like, there's a good chance that Ruby could end up winning this. So I think that definitely played a part into it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just they're not going to wrestle perfect matches all the time or ever, really. Right. And sometimes it helps, sometimes it takes away. It kind of depends. But this one I enjoyed this one more than Adam Cole and Samoa Joe, and I'm a huge mark for both of those guys. And I'm not saying their match was bad either. It was just I think I was more invested in the Britt Baker Ruby Soho because of the fact that it was like a 50-50 coin toss for me.
Right. Let's talk about, we mentioned earlier, this is almost a 6-hour show, and Tony Khan, kudos, respect to the NBA and all that kind of stuff. We're trying to make this a long show and to let everybody watch the game and whatever. But this match was added at the last minute. It seemed to make sure that they got to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that was this 6-person tag, Sammy Guevara, Frankie Kazarian, and Ty Conti taking on Scorpio Sky, Ethan Page, and the debuting Paige Van Zandt.
Yeah.
It was fine. It was what it was. And I get that Paige Van Zandt wasn't the focal point of why this match happened.
Yeah.
But I hate that she got put in this match. Way to just throw everything out the window as far as her debut is concerned. Way to not make it feel special.
Right.
And it just proved to me like she didn't even get the win. So it just proves to me she's not going to be a factor in the women's division, and that's terrible.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to be a factor. I think she will be at some point in the future. I don't think she's ready though. Like I don't think she's at that point where she's ready to. She's not as believable as a Ronda Rousey coming in and
I think
getting
that
right into that point.
Well, I think that has to do too with who she wrestled.
Yeah.
Like if you put her in the ring with a Statlander or with a Ruby Soho or whatever, then they can make her look way better.
Right.
And get her a big time win.
Right.
But if you're not even going to let her beat Ty Conti, come on.
Yeah. I think this match was more for the fans watching Sammy kick Ty Conti in the face. Like sure I really think because that to me that was the biggest moment of the entire match was sure. That's the most that popped. I will give credit to the commentary team for when that happened because I was audibly laughing at JR's response to Sammy kicking her in the face. Like, it was genuinely funny. I don't know if he meant for it to be funny, but it was
Right.
hilarious to see that. Also, credit to Shivani as well during the MJF match when he was getting powerbombed over and over and over again. That was hilarious to hear Shivani dog MJF that whole time.
Yes.
But yeah, to me, this was the worst match of the night. Like, I
Ooh.
think this was the match that I was the least invested in. I did not care about it. I am so glad we were done with this Sammy Guevara Scorpio Sky feud. I think Scorpio deserves better. Sammy needs to go off TV for a while. Sammy
Yes,
and
he
Ty
does.
need to get off TV for a good while. Like,
Yep.
Sam is getting to Cody level of hate, I think, very quickly, and they need to get off TV for a while. I feel bad for Frankie. Like, Frankie's on the back end of his career, and this is not the stuff he should be put in. Which
Right.
I would have much rather seen a Scorpio Sky versus Frankie Kazarian TNT Championship match. Like, that would have been
Yep.
I would have been more invested in that.
Yep.
I will say Ethan Page looked decent in this match. Like, I got more behind Ethan Page in this match than anybody else.
Right.
But yeah, to me, this was the worst match of the night. This was the match that I was like, I cannot stand this.
Well, shout out to our boys at CCW down in Florida for training Paige Van Zant. She's been working with Gangrel and that crew down there. So shout out to them. Obviously, they're doing fantastic work because she looked good in the match. She looked ready for the match. I just don't think she should have been in the match. I don't think it should have happened, but whatever. Also, shout out to Scorpio Sky and his Kobe Bryant tribute version of the TNT Championship.
It's beautiful.
Love it. It's amazing. Congratulations to that.
I don't know how long they're going to keep this tradition up. I like the fact that every champion gets a new title. Like, it's weird, it's different, but it makes it feel like special. Like, it makes the championship kind of feel special in a weird way. So I kind of hope they keep that tradition up. Probably if they do that, there won't be as many TBS or TNT title changes. But I like the fact that they're kind of doing that as it goes along.
Yep, I dig it for sure. Let's move on. I mentioned earlier the fantastic women's match between Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb. I called it in the preview show that this one was going to be a dark horse for a match of the night. I'm not going to say it got to match of the night level, but daggum. What a fantastic match between these two ladies.
Serena Deeb deserves all the credit in the world.
Yes, she does.
She did not get the respect that she deserved necessarily, not just in WWE, but kind of in her whole run up until getting into AEW. Like, she even said in a promo with Dustin, like, I shaved my head to show how committed I was to this, and nobody still believed me. Right. Nobody still gave me an opportunity. I wouldn't hate for her to be a women's champion at some point down the line.
I agree.
Like, I think totally she could definitely be women's champion at some point.
She could be TBS champion and bring up those younger girls and that kind of thing.
And she could do what she did with like the 5-minute challenges, do open challenges of like each week open challenges. Let's kind of go through this. Like, that would be really cool to see that. Thunder Rosa's gotten better too. Like, I give Thunder Rosa a lot of credit in this match as well. I'm not saying that she was bad ever, because her trilogy of matches with Britt Baker and even her lights out match were amazing. We saw her versus Mercedes Martinez in Nashville, and that match was killer. Like, that match was really good. This match was absolutely amazing as well. So credit to both women. Credit to AEW. 4 women's matches on the night. Like, that's not really heard of. There are 5 hours of pay-per-views. Let's give a lot of people different chances, and I think with this one they knocked it out of the park.
I think they did too. I was thoroughly impressed with this match, and I had high expectations going into it that it was going to be a show stealer, and daggone, man, they did so well. Let's move on to the Anarchy in the Arena. Jericho Appreciation Society against Danielson, Moxley, Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz. What a match. Like, it truly was anarchy.
It was my favorite match of the night. Like,
really?
This was my favorite. I think I just love car crash matches and hardcore matches, and it's just, I love all of it. It was the most fun watching this, because it was insane. It was crazy when Eddie Kingston and I forget who he was fighting in the concession area.
Was Daniel Garcia, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he was spraying them with mustard and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That was amazing. He threw him through the merch stand.
It was Matt Menard, one of
Yeah,
the guys
yeah,
from 2.0.
2.0. Yeah, he threw him through the merch stand. Like that was amazing. Jake Hager,
dude, Matt Menard, the dude from 2.0,
he
bled
like crazy.
How? Okay, did I miss it? How did he get busted open? Was it hard way? I must have missed it.
I think it was. I think he bladed. I want to say Moxley hit him with something.
Okay.
And it busted him open. Moxley bled like crazy too.
Yes, he did. Yep.
And I think Moxley, the dude is psychotic because I think Moxley continues to blade. Because there are times where like Bryan Danielson bladed and he was bleeding, but he stopped at some point and he just had dry blood on his face. I'm pretty sure when Moxley realizes his blood is drying, he just starts cutting again to keep bleeding. Because he was bleeding like crazy. The spot where he went through the barbed wire table thing and the table didn't break and he literally just took the brunt end of that barbed wire. That was stiff.
Yep.
I'm sadistic. I was a little disappointed that we got gasoline and no fire at all. Like that was a good fake out. I will say that was a good fake out, but the match itself was just crazy.
I thought for sure that they were going to set the barbed wire thing on fire and Moxley was going to go through it.
Like, when Kingston
was bringing the gasoline out, I was like, oh crap, they're setting the barbed wire thing on fire. And here goes Moxley. He's making up for that exploding ring that didn't happen. He's going to go through the fire.
I thought for a second, I was like, are they really going to light Chris Jericho on fire here? Because if they do, credit to Jericho because he's taking light tubes.
Yep.
Now he's on fire. Like, give Chris Jericho all the credit in the world. Eddie Kingston walking down, bleeding, limping, holding the gas can. I swear I was watching something out of Evil Dead. Like, I was thoroughly entertained through this entire match. There was not a moment where I was bored watching this match. Jake Hager taking the metal bat and beating Bryan Danielson's knee like viciously. All of it was just rough, absolutely rough.
Yep, it was exactly what it was supposed to be. It was as advertised.
Yeah,
a fantastic match,
much better than the Stadium Stampede stuff. Like I love this type of stuff,
and I think that Jericho Appreciation Society really needed the win here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we need to get them. I don't want to say serious, but we need to make them more viable.
Yep.
Yes, more important. That's the word.
Yep.
Also interesting that we're going to go the Danielson Kingston route. It seems like that should be. I don't know how I feel about it yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun because Eddie Kingston, what he lacks in ring, because I don't mind him in ring, but what he lacks in the ring, he makes up for on the mic. And Bryan Danielson can carry me to a 5-star match. So I'm pretty sure he can carry Eddie Kingston to a banger of a match. So I'm excited to see where they go. I think the story of Moxley now being with Danielson, but also having that relationship sort of with Eddie Kingston, I think that's going to play a massive role in all of this as well.
Do you think it leads to a split of the Blackpool Combat Club? Are we headed that way?
We might be heading all out with Bryan Danielson versus Jon Moxley. Like that, if we get that in a hardcore match with William Regal, a special guest referee, then I'm in for that. But I feel like it's too soon. Like I feel like they have caught fire with Wheeler Yuta on the team as well. Like I feel like it's too soon to pull the plug on it, but they might.
I mean, you can't have, like you just said, you can't have that Danielson Kingston feud and not acknowledge the Moxley stuff. You can't.
And Moxley's one of those characters that he could be like, you know what? You guys handle your business. I'm not getting involved. Like you guys handle your business. When you're done acting like children, come talk to me and we'll actually go beat some real people up. Like I could see Moxley cutting that exact promo, cussing them out a little bit, flipping the bird and walking off. Like I could definitely see that being Jon Moxley.
And you could turn this into easily Eddie Kingston joining the Blackpool Combat Club. You could,
that'd be good. I don't
do that.
I don't feel like he's the type of character that would, but
you gotta have a brawler in there. I mean,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
He is definitely a brawler. He's definitely a brawler.
That is for sure. All right, let's go to one of the more unexpected finishes of the night. and that is the tag team title triple threat match. Jurassic Express retaining the titles against Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs, and then, of course, Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, Shane Strickland.
Yep.
Man, we both predicted that there was no way they were coming out of here with this. I don't think it's as much that I'm shocked that they retained the titles, because when I looked at the two teams that they stacked up against them, I'm like, I don't really see a tag team that's going to carry the titles for as long as people have been carrying the titles. I just don't see that.
Yeah.
I think my big question is, what the heck is next for Jurassic Express? Like, what more are they going to do?
Well, I know on Dynamite they're facing the Undisputed Elite, so you could run them back versus the Bucks. You could run them back versus Red Dragon by themselves. You could have those
where
two.
We're headed. Yeah.
Because it could be one of those where it's the current AEW champion. We'll wait till we get to the match versus Adam Cole, and then Undisputed Elite, Red Dragon versus Jurassic Express, trying to get all the gold on Undisputed Elite. You could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know. The match itself was better than I thought it was going to be. I was expecting it to be bad. I'm
sitting here watching it while we're recording this. Y'all heard me pop a couple times for some stuff.
And it's not that I was expecting it to be bad, but we've had matches with the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks, FTR versus Young Bucks, whatever. The tag division has a lot of high standards in AEW. I feel like the tag division has the highest standards in all of AEW because
agreed.
They have the best tag teams in the world. Not saying that they have the best, but collectively, it's the best tag division in professional wrestling.
Absolutely.
And so they have a lot to live up to. And when you kind of have thrown together teams, because obviously Starks and Hobbs have been together basically since they both have been in AEW. They basically have been together, part of Team Taz. Then you have Swerve and Lee, who have been have been a tag team on the independent scene. I don't know. I was not expecting Jurassic Express to retain. However, the false finishes in this match got me big time.
Sure.
Got me big time.
Yep. And then at the end, you have Christian putting Jungle Boy on his shoulders. I thought for sure he was just going to drop him and turn. Why not?
See, I think what could happen is Jurassic Express could also drop the titles on one of these AEW specials.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
They won it on an AEW special.
Yeah, Christian could turn on Jungle Boy, and then at All Out, we get Christian versus Jungle Boy. Right. I think you could definitely do something like that as well. But yeah, I was sitting there watching the whole time, Christian's going to drop him. He's going to he's going to do the electric chair drop right here. Jungle Boy's going to go down, and we're off to the races. But I think if he would have done it after they won the titles or retained the titles, I don't think it makes as much sense if he doesn't do it when they've dropped the titles.
Well, that's true. It also, but then again, you're really not expecting it when they win the titles or when they retain the titles, rather. So then it just raises more questions.
That's true. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. And there was a couple points where Luchasaurus accidentally kicked Jungle Boy in the face. And I was like, oh, there's our entrance. There's where the door gets blown open of okay, we're definitely getting a Christian heel turn at some point.
Right.
And I'm kind of glad, we dog AEW a lot sometimes for going too slow of a burn, but I feel like this one, you could let it burn a little longer and it's not going to hurt the eventual feud that we get. I think you could let it hold off just a little longer,
right,
to really milk it for all it's worth and then get the turn.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to get on my Christian soapbox because we're already kind of running long on this show, so I'll leave that one alone. They are, like you said, we are getting a big 8-man tag this week on Dynamite. It's going to be Christian and Matt Hardy and Jurassic Express.
I think it's a 10-man tag.
Nope, they took them out.
They took Jeff out?
They took Jeff and they took Adam Cole out.
Jeff probably for back issues.
Right. And Adam Cole
just be ringside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's Red Dragon, it's the Young Bucks against Jurassic Express, Christian and Matt Hardy on Dynamite.
That'd still be fun. That'd still be a fun match.
Well, yeah, definitely be a fun match. I mean, give Jeff Hardy a break. Come on, man.
And you could even, if you wanted to, I wouldn't be fully shocked if they did Jurassic Express versus Hardys, and Hardys win the titles. Like I think the Hardys could have an AEW tag title run for a little bit.
I hope not.
I think it'll be the shortest reign
You're
out of all the
right.
tag champs, but I think there's a chance that they could put the titles on them.
You're right. I hope you're not. I hope it doesn't happen, but you're right. There's a good chance of it, unfortunately.
You can't tell me the crowd wouldn't pop if the Hardys won the tag titles.
Oh, the roof would blow off the place. It would be insane. The people would be so happy that their beloved Hardys have won another tag team championship. Anyway.
They haven't won the AEW tag team. Like there's always a new title in professional wrestling to win.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of titles to win, let's go to the main event of the show. We have a new AEW World Heavyweight Champion, CM Punk, defeated Hangman Adam Page in the main event of Double or Nothing. How happy were you when this happened?
Oh, I was so happy. I made sure to be sitting down to watch this match because I knew it was going to be a midnight main event, which I will say it was a long pay-per-view, but a main event starting at midnight feels very special. Like it has a very, especially in Vegas.
Or a main event starting at midnight in New York at the end of a WrestleMania does not feel as special as you want it to.
That doesn't, but that was also not a 5-hour show. That was like a 12-hour wrestling show. So that's
7, not 12, 7.
But it probably felt like 12 after after being there all day.
It at least felt like 8. I will tell you that. But go
but
ahead.
Like it made it, especially in Vegas, it made it feel like a big fight feel.
Sure.
The entire time. The match wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty.
Yeah, the buckshot lariat by CM Punk.
The Punk shot lariat. They saved it perfectly the first time, and they shouldn't have gone back to it again. But that didn't take away anything of Punk winning. Like I was so happy to see it. I even tweeted out when it happened. Seeing CM Punk with a championship just feels right. Like it just feels absolutely right.
Because he's not going to be the TNT champion. Let's just go ahead and call that right now.
And he's not, more than likely, he's not going to be tag champion.
No.
Unless we have like an RK Bro situation in AEW.
Right.
He's not going to be tag champion. And he needs to have an AEW title run. Like, that makes the title feel, not that Paige didn't make the title feel special or that anybody else that has ever held the title didn't make it feel special.
Right.
When you have a guy like CM Punk hold the title, it makes it feel special. Like, it automatically makes it feel special. So, that was so cool to see him win the title. Part of me thought for a second that maybe Okada was going to show up at the end of this to set up something at AEW Forbidden Door.
Mm-hmm.
If money would have started falling from the sky, I would have lost my mind for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy it didn't because Punk needed that moment of like celebrating in the ring. The crowd was split 50-50, and then when he won, it was just a loud noise of pop of people freaking out and being excited. So I'm so happy he won the title. I don't think he's going to have a long title run, but I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts.
I think he will have the shortest title run of any of them. I'm not saying it's going to end it all out, but it's going to be shorter than any of the other ones. I think.
I think he could probably drop it at I think Revolution's the one after All Out.
Full Gear.
I think he could lose it at Full Gear.
Yep.
Or even if they wanted to, I think Revolution would be a good time as well. Kind of.
He could even drop it on one of these special Dynamites.
Yep.
That's what Moxley did.
Yeah.
So I think that could be very possible too. I'm with you though, man. I'm happy that he won. I've been very vocal on this show. Everybody knows that I'm not the biggest of CM Punk fans, but I respect the fact that Punk probably needs a title run. Yeah. I'm happy that he's going to get it. I'm also just as happy that the Hangman run is over. Like, I am just so happy. I need him to go back to the drawing board and prove himself all over again.
I think he is the perfect example of there are some guys that are just better at the chase than being the champion. And that's not because I didn't hate his title run. He had every match he had as AEW champion was
really good.
Great, was really good.
I agree.
Like,
I agree.
To follow a guy like Kenny Omega and have just as good, not necessarily better, but just as good title defenses. He never had a death match situation where like I never felt cheated after one of his AEW championship matches.
Right.
And so the matches weren't the problem. It was kind of just everything else felt very dysfunctional, very convoluted.
He just didn't feel like the centerpiece of the show.
No, he did not.
Never.
And that's not going to happen with CM Punk. Like
Right.
Punk is going to be, and I don't think your champion has to be the center of your show all the time.
Oh, okay. Show was wrong word. Brand. Sorry.
Yeah. And
brand.
And I completely agree. I think there are times when your champion has to be the center of the attention because he's your champion.
Yeah.
I don't think it has to be like 52 weeks out of the year. The champion has to be the center focus on everything. But I don't feel like he was ever really the center focus, like this, like the focal point. The only time I would say he was when he feuded with Adam Cole. Like I think that was the only time where that feud felt main event worthy, which is kind of, this makes it sound bad because I didn't hate his title run, but it was by far the weakest AEW championship run.
Absolutely.
And it's that was going to happen at some point because Moxley's run was really good. Jericho's run was really good. Kenny Omega's run was really good. It was going to happen at some point. And this is one of those times where it happened.
I'm not upset by it, but it's kind of disheartening in a way that the first title run that was like that was by a homegrown AEW guy. By the first real homegrown AEW guy to win the title. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know if I would consider him a homegrown AEW guy because he was pretty big in New Japan.
Okay.
And stuff like that. But compared to John Moxley, Chris Jericho, he wasn't as prestigious as the first three.
Correct.
And I think that definitely plays a part. I think if it was like an MJF or Darby Allin or something like that, I think that definitely plays a part in it.
Right.
But I agree. I think they could have put it more focused on it. And granted, he was champion when Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, after they debuted, like he was the one that got the championship. And when Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson first debut in your company, you're not going to be as important as they are because they're trying to build them up. CM Punk showing up, like there's a lot of stuff that threw a wrench in Hangman's championship run.
Right.
And he was hot with the crowd. The crowd was always kind of behind him and a lot of the stuff. It was just he wasn't he was never that important. It felt like in AEW as champion.
Right. And that stinks, because again, we're not taking anything away from Hangman individually. His matches, were always really good. It's just the company did not make him feel important enough. But regardless, that chapter is closed. We'll see if Hangman makes a run back. Let's see if they run back Punk and Hangman. We'll see, what he does to get back to that level. Regardless, a new chapter in AEW. CM Punk is the champion. I just watched the finish of the match as we're talking right now. Crowd's going nuts. It's cool. It's a feel-good story.
Yep.
Man, if anybody would have told you 5 years ago that this would have happened, you would have put your life savings saying that there's no way.
Absolutely. If you'd have told me 2 years ago this was happening, I would have told you no. It's maybe a couple years from now, but not now. But I'm so happy. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it. I'm less confident that MJF is going to be the one to take the title off of Punk now.
Yes. Well, yes, for obvious
I think that is definitely up in the air. I think Adam Cole could be the one to do it because I think he's probably next in line. If MJF is not next in line, I think Adam Cole is. But yeah, I'm excited to see what they're going to do with this because there's a lot of really cool opportunities now with Punk as champion. Kind of seeing what they're going to do with his next challenger and kind of where they're going from here with him.
Yeah, I was going to say let's sort of put our fantasy booking hats on right now real quick as we wrap up this show. We saw CM Punk kind of playing a little bit of a heel in this Hangman run.
Yeah.
Do you think we head that direction, or do you think it's such an adulation and such a huge emotional moment when we get to Dynamite and he walks out for the first time that there's no way we can't go Punk babyface? If so, we are now two babyface champions in a row. You mentioned Adam Cole. He's like the only one that comes to mind that, is going to get a run.
Yeah, I mean, you could always turn Bryan Danielson heel after all this, and he could be the one. I mean, run back CM Punk versus Bryan Danielson, because we saw that in WWE, and it wasn't it wasn't even the main event of the show. Which, during that time,
Right.
I forget who was I think Cena was the champ, or somebody more important than Punk was champion. So that they could run that back. I think Adam Cole is probably the best fit. But I think during this time you could also see like guys like Ricky Stark get an opportunity, the same way that Lance Archer got a shot, or Powerhouse Hobbs. You can run that back and have them kind of go through that again. But I think the next big challenger for Punk is probably Cole. Like, I think that's going to be his final feud going into things. I don't know who you could put in there with him right now, other than MJF, but I don't think you want to do MJF this soon. I'm trying to think who else is. I mean, you've got your Chicago show, the Forbidden Door, next, so it's going to be some New Japan guy coming in for the next feud, which I think is great for a guy like Punk. Like, a New Japan guy comes in, a dream matchup. Let's have that, and then Kenny Omega shows up at the end of the show, or something like that. There's something that's going to happen at the end of that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not saying that you can't have two babyface champions in a row. With the way that everything has been and the way the roster is, I don't want to see Punk repeat everything that Hangman did.
Right.
Like, have this long feud with Adam Cole, sprinkle in Lance Archer, sprinkle in, fill in the blank.
Right.
But again, it feels different with Punk. Punk is not Hangman Adam Page, so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And you get like Andrade, like you could do Punk versus Andrade if you wanted to. You could do Punk versus Malachi Black. You could do. There's some options there, that you could kind of have Punk do in the meantime before you get to his final feud or whatever. But I don't know. I feel like he needs to have somebody big.
Yep.
And a heel, but I think they need to be AEW homegrown. Like, I think that is really important. The only issue is if you do that, then you could start to get the crowd turning against Punk, because he's now beating the AEW homegrown guys. Like, it's a fine line you got to walk unless you want to just take Punk fully heel. But I think it's going to take some time to get to that point with him.
I mean, if you take Punk fully heel, then you've got the door opens for guys like Keith Lee, for guys like John Moxley, for
Jungle
Boy,
yep,
Eddie Kingston,
Darby Allin again.
Yeah, there you go. So I think there's a lot of possibilities. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week on Dynamite. I think that'll tell a whole lot. But like you said, we've got the New Japan show coming up, so that'll be interesting. Any final thoughts on Double or Nothing before we put a bow on this episode and move on?
Yeah, the by far still the weirdest AEW pay-per-view. A lot of really good moments, a lot of really cool moments. Great wrestling, because it's AEW. They're always going to have great wrestling.
Right.
Just some weird booking decisions. And I think this is the first time that we've kind of said this about AEW. Like, there's some weird booking decisions that have happened at this show. So it was bound to happen at some point that we were going to get a show like this, because even with like NXT takeovers, while most of them are great, you have your handful that are, if they were anywhere else, they'd be considered good, but because of the other things that they have to compete against, they're not. I think this one's going to kind of fit in that category as well.
I completely agree. Well, we will try to have a little more AEW talk for you coming up on Thursday, but we are mainly going to devote that one to Hell in a Cell. It's coming up this Sunday. We got Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins going at it inside the structure. Bobby Lashley taking on Omos and MVP in a handicap match. Kevin Owens and Ezekiel and Asuka, Becky Lynch, and Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship. And I'm sure lots of other stuff.
They announced tonight on Raw that it's Edge, Damian Priest, and Rhea Ripley versus AJ Finn and Liv Morgan.
I had a feeling that was going to happen. Okay.
Yep.
So there we go. So I'm sure there'll be a couple more things that'll be announced throughout the week via social media. So we'll have all that for you coming up on Thursday. And again, don't forget, make sure you go back and catch up on the PBWF draft that is available in the archives, wherever you find your podcast, and on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel. Get yourself prepared for the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Federation that is coming soon. Want to make sure that you are geared up and prepared for that. If you don't go back and listen to the draft episode, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you don't, I'm sure that Andy and I will do a fantastic job of making you aware of what is going on so that you don't miss anything.
And if you don't want to watch the draft, it's exciting because you don't know who's on whose roster.
There you go.
So each entrance is a pop. So I kind of get it.
That's true. That is very true. But keep it tuned in right here, the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, wherever you find your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Leave us a 5-star review. Make sure you subscribe. Also, make sure you subscribe on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel. Hit the notifications bell. Support us and all of the other shows on that platform. I know they would appreciate it. And, of course, Tom and the guys over at SportsWire Radio, make sure you support them and all of their ventures. All right. For Mr. Andy York, my name is Chris Belcher. Thank you for hanging out with us on this edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. We will catch you guys down the road.